Want to shop Walmart Black Friday deals first? Walmart Plus members get early access to our hottest deals. Join now and get 50% off a 1-year annual membership. Shop Black Friday deals first with Walmart Plus. See terms at walmartplus.com.
The new Apple Watch Series 10 is here. It has the biggest display ever. It's also the thinnest Apple Watch ever, making it even more comfortable on your wrist. And it's the fastest charging Apple Watch, getting you 8 hours of charge in just 15 minutes. Introducing the all-new Apple Watch Series 10, now available for the first time in glossy jet black aluminum. Compared to previous generation, iPhone XS or later required. Charge time and actual results will vary.
This year, Santa's bringing the power of Energizer into his workshop.
Whoa, the Energizer Bunny's got so much power.
Wait, he's powered up all the toys. I think that means we're done for the year.
I love this bunny.
He's the hardest working helper the North Pole has ever seen. And he wants all your gifts to have the power of the #1 longest lasting AA battery. So this holiday season, stock up on Santa's and the elves' favorite battery, Energizer Ultimate Lithium.
Prep for Thanksgiving at Whole Foods Market. Save now on no antibiotics ever frozen whole turkey, just $1.49 a pound with Prime. Sales on brie and select seafood appetizers help get things started. For sides, go with wallet-happy favorites from 365 by Whole Foods Market. And finish with decadent desserts from the bakery. Or get your whole spread catered. Just order early. Get Thanksgiving ready at Whole Foods Market. Terms apply.
Hey everybody, it's Weird Islanders, the podcast, back once again. My name is Dan. That is Mike. How are you this evening, Mike?
Oh, I'm jacked up. This is a good one. This is a guy who I've been waiting to get to since we started Weird Islanders. Now this is our third season.
Yeah, fourth.
Jesus. I'm actually surprised that it took this long for this fellow to be picked from the list, because I'm not alone. I think especially of Islander fans of my vintage, those being the let's call them the 2001, 2002 fans, diehards, those who got indoctrinated through that season, became diehards through that season. Because this guy, a few years after that, became one of my favorite Islanders. And you know what I really like about this player when doing this episode was I loved this player, and I was like, I really want that guy to be an Islander.
Yeah.
Before he was an Islander, and it worked out. And
Right.
There's very few players where that happens, right? So hockey fans, especially on Twitter, like to joke like, "Oh, you're accustomed, or you understand the Julien Gauthier experience or the Ryan Strome experience." This player was a experienced player. You didn't understand what it was like to have this guy on your team or root for this guy until he was on your team, because he was like just a ball of fun, just a little ball of fun.
Yeah, definitely had an experience attached to him. And this is going to be one of my favorite episodes. I could already tell, because these types of episodes are my favorite, where I basically let you and our guest just completely go off, waxing nostalgic about this player who I remember well, but I know he's a huge favorite of yours. And once I found out who this player was going to be, I was like, oh man, I can't wait to hear what Mike has to say about him. But first, let me introduce our great guest. If you're on Islanders Twitter, hockey Twitter, whatever we're calling it now, you've seen our friend's work. He posts videos all the time. He posts some generally intelligent tweets all the time, which is a great thing to see in the Isles Twitter space. He also hosts spaces and discussions from time to time. He is Isles Den. Isles Den, what's going on tonight?
Dan, Mike, thanks for having me, guys. Really excited to dive into the player today. When this player was acquired by the Islanders, I was young. It was my second year watching the team, and this one was certainly electrifying. I had no idea who he was, but boy, was I happy with the returns.
I would think so. Yeah, especially for a younger fan, he's definitely an electrifying player. Before we get to the player, though, I want to ask you a little bit about your Twitter feed because it's come on strong over the last year or so. You post a ton of videos. You spent a whole summer basically posting great videos of like random Islanders plays. You posted one today, and we're recording this in late August. I have no idea when this is run, but you posted one today that was so great. I was so mad that I didn't include this in our Randy Robitaille episode because it was like a headman pass from Rick DiPietro up to Randy Robitaille for a goal, and it's just sort of a random, Islanders moment in the middle of a long summer offseason. How do you come about picking the videos to share? I know you get some people request stuff, but like sometimes it's just random stuff. Is it just something you come across and are like, yeah, I'm going to share this because it's kind of cool?
Yeah, so last night I saw a trend on Twitter. It's NHL goalie week. So I've been trying to think of some creative ways to throw Islanders in there. And man, that was quite the headman pass from DiPietro right to Randy Robitaille.
I know.
And I was going through the player we're about to dive in on today, and I came across that. I was like, wait, I have to put this up right now. No doubt. So that's how that one happened. But yeah, last night I was posting some with Kevin Poulin, Robin Leonard.
Yeah.
Really going through the names. I got some more dropping tomorrow.
Yeah. Oh, perfect. I can't wait.
Yeah, it's those videos they're both a blessing and a curse for me because I spend a lot of my summer just watching old Islander, highlights and games, and of course old Ranger and Maple Leafs elimination game highlights as well. So when I see just even a 30-second clip like that or whatever it comes out to be, it usually sends me down a wormhole, and 2 hours later, I'm watching Richard Zednick or something crazy. And and the best part about that video, which as we were saying, we're posting this. Who knows when this episode comes out? But it is scored on another weird Islander, Marc-Andre Bergeron, who's still in his Sabres gear playing for the Flyers. It's DiPietro, touch pass from Yashin to Robitaille, goal against Marty Bergeron. Like, boy, and of course Robitaille was a former Flyer. It's just all sorts of crazy wormholes in that.
It's incredible
goal. Yeah, just so good.
With Martin Bergeron, I was trying to find some Islanders tape of him today for NHL goalie week, and man, that might have been the hardest one to find.
Yeah, not hard.
Yeah, did not last very long. But I mean, I watched him play, so I'm like, I don't know. Again, it's got memory hold, but that's what happens when you're a weird Islander. But yeah, he's a guy I've been trying to get on the show for a while now. Maybe one of these days we'll actually get him on. But no, it's terrific. And I mean, again, they're always such a bright, fun thing. And, and then everybody else kind of falls down the same rabbit hole. So like if you go down the replies, it's like, oh yeah, I remember this. Oh man, this was sick, that kind of thing. So it's pretty cool. But not only are you posting these videos and hosting spaces on Twitter, but you have a podcast coming out soon too, which I'm very excited about. I want to hear all about it. Again, it's probably kind of going to come out before this episode, but so tell us about the podcast. Cause I believe you're also doing this with another former Weird Islanders guest that we've had on, right?
Yeah. So myself, at Pizza Sports Guy on Twitter and at Ethan GSN on Twitter. Us three are starting a podcast coming out September 18th. Might have already dropped by the time this comes out. Just sort of came into place. So when I first joined Isles Twitter, I was making all the videos, and then the Pizza Sports Guy reached out, asked if he could post one, and then we ran a space together. We had some good chemistry there, and then Ethan hopped on board, and it's been a lot of fun. So we figured we'd start a show, and we're really looking forward to it.
That's great. I'm really looking forward to it as well. I'm always glad to have some new Islanders podcasts to listen to. I look forward to it. And like I've always said, everybody's different. So like it's, we do our thing. Hockey Night in New York does their thing. Skates at the Stakes does their thing. Through the Island does their thing. And now I'm looking forward to whatever your thing is. And Ethan, we had him on talking about Mike Comrie last year, mainly talking about Hillary Duff, but we talked a little about Comrie. Yeah.
Great listen.
Yeah, so we had a lot of fun. So I'm looking forward to it. So yeah, September 18th. If it's past this time, I hope you already listened to it. If it's not yet, you check it out. But we're here. We'll talk a little bit more about the podcast later on. But we're here today, as you mentioned before, to talk about an Islander who didn't play very long on the island, but made an impression for a lot of teams and showed up and was the kind of guy who teams liked to acquire, but didn't like him enough to really hold on to him. So Isles Den, will you please reveal the subject of tonight's episode of Weird Islanders, the podcast?
The Weird Islander we will be discussing tonight is none other than Marc-Andre Bergeron.
Yes, I'm so excited about this. The legendary Mab if you're listening to this and you know the name, I already know what's pictured in your head. A very small man skating up and down the ice, scoring power play goals. It was quite a sight to see. Before we do all that, reminder that we are on Patreon at patreon.com/Islanders Anxiety. Membership gets you ad-free episodes, bonus podcasts, written posts, and a whole lot more. Or you can join for free to read announcements and our weekly release calendar. So sign up today, patreon.com/Islanders Anxiety. Okay, so we showed you the big list. You had a good laugh about some of the names that were on there. It's quite a list. But what stuck out to you about Marc-Andre Bergeron? Why was he the guy that you were like, I got to talk about this guy?
So I started watching the Islanders in 2005, the first season after the lockout. I was 7 years old. That was the first real season I can remember. And 1 year later, the Islanders, they had a rough season in 2006. So 2007 came along. That was when Neil Smith was fired. Garth Snow came in. The backup goalie becomes GM. And that 2006-2007 season, the way it ended and all played out, that really got my juices flowing as an Islander fan, I will say. And Marc-Andre Bergeron was a huge part in that.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. It was exciting. And that season was pretty wild. Mike, I know this season has meant a lot to you. We've talked a lot about this season with Ryan Smith and other players from here, but Bergeron definitely stuck out to you. So when you hear that name, what's the first thing you think of?
Oh my God. The first thing I like, the first picture that comes to my mind is him just cocked back, ready to rip a one-timer.
Yeah.
Actually, not even a one-timer. He was someone who on the power play, he loved to have the puck on his stick. He'd kind of walk it to the center of the point and would just pull back. And you'd be like, how are none of these defense penalty killers gonna take this puck off his stick? It seems like he's gearing up for a slap shot for like 10 seconds, and then he would fire it. And in a weird way, and I don't know if anyone else felt this way about Bergeron, but I always felt like I could tell if he was going to score or not before he shot the puck. And there were so many instances, and I remember Howie Rose used to always talk about his punch shot. Like he had a little punch shot that he liked, where he had the howitzer, of course, but he also had like another tool in his kit where he'd just a quick little wrister through. James Wisniewski did this too. He'd just take a little wrister, and it would have some oomph to it, but obviously not up to the level of his slap shot. And it would always find its way through. It would always find its way through into the back of the net. And when the Islanders traded for Bergeron, I remember just being so excited because it was an indication that the team wasn't giving up on the season too, which was really important. Like they were going for it. And as we've talked about, the season was up and down and all around.
Yeah,
and
it was crazy.
I believe his first home game, or I don't know if it was first game with the team or if it was his debut, but he played that game I like to talk about all the time. That game against the Penguins in February of 2007.
That was it.
Yeah, like that's one of my favorite games ever. I was there. That was the game where the Chris Simon scored a couple goals. Ryan Malone scored the hat trick, all 3 goals in the first minute of the period. The Islanders kind of just, and the Penguins were on fire, and the Islanders kind of just hung with them that night. And Bergeron was there. So there was, of the 7,000 or 8,000 people at Nassau Coliseum that night, there was a little bit of buzz because everyone was excited to see what this new kind of player was like, and he delivered right away. He was so much fun to watch. So I'm this could be a long episode because I can talk about this guy forever.
Yeah, he so that game, February 19th, 2007, he had 2 assists in that game, including one on the game tying goal by Chris Simon, like you said, and then Mike Sillinger scored with 27 seconds to go to win the game.
And on that shift it was him, Hilbert, and Hunter, and Crosby was just going. Crosby had the puck. I know exactly where I was sitting for those games. I was in the upper bowl of the Coliseum, sort of on center ice, but on the Islanders attack twice side between the red line and the blue line, and the entire crowd was just waiting for Crosby to score on that shift. But Hilbert, Hunter, and Sillinger kept it together, and Sillinger comes down the other end and scores, and those forwards were just gassed. And I just remember leaving that night and just being like, this team's going to win the Stanley Cup now that they won that game. They have Bergeron. The vibes were just so good. DPH was playing all right. Like, and obviously there's so many more twists left in that season.
Yeah.
And plenty of them had to do with Marc-Andre Bergeron.
Yes. Before we get to that season and his subsequent trade to the island and trade away from the island, there are a lot of twists in this guy's story prior to that. So let's start with the fact that he wasn't drafted. He wasn't drafted. He played his junior at Baie-Comeau and Shawinigan, but he was not drafted, and he signed a contract with the Oilers. Played mostly for their AHL team in Hamilton at the time, and played really, really well. Put up a lot of goals, was going, making these end-to-end rushes. And of course, when you do that as a defenseman in Edmonton, they start calling you Paul Coffey. So they couldn't wait to get this guy up to the big club. He gets there and he spends the next couple of seasons with the Oilers. And wouldn't you know it, the Oilers go on a pretty crazy run to the 2006 Stanley Cup Final. And Bergeron had a heck of a season that year. 15 goals, 20 assists, 35 points. That was his best season to that point. That was his third year in the league. And the Oilers go all the way to the Cup Final. Of course, they lose to Carolina. And one of the big reasons they lost to Carolina was their goalie got hurt. Another former Islander, another weird Islander who we'll definitely do a podcast on at some point, Dwayne Rolison. He gets hurt. Well, how does he get hurt? Well, a couple of guys collide with him. Well, who collided with him? Well, Andrew Ladd, who would become an Islander years later, who was playing for the Hurricanes at the time, and Marc-Andre Bergeron, Rolison's own teammate.
It's unbelievable.
It's unbelievable.
Up over the line he goes. A nice pass gets in there. And Ladd is nailed. And a penalty is going to be called.
And Rolison got nailed too, as Ladd was run into the net by Bergeron, and Rolison's on his stomach in the crease. And he got the rebound, the body rebound. And this is bad news for the Oilers. And Rolison has not moved very much. Let's have a look at it here. There's the penalty, and there's the hit, and it might have pinched Rolison's right arm against the goalpost, because he doesn't look like he's very comfortable at the moment.
I was dead. I didn't even realize Ladd was the other guy in the video. And when you pointed that out to me, I was like, oh my God, of course he was. Of course he had to be, right? Like, it's the funniest
My
thing
head
ever.
was spinning watching it.
It's crazy. It's crazy. And like, this was a traumatic thing for Oilers fans for a long time. So like, I mean, you were a little kid watching this, but like, do you remember watching this? Like, was this, kind of around the time when you were just getting into hockey?
I remember that Stanley Cup. I remember it going to game. I remember game 6 when it was 3-2 Carol. Actually, I remember game 5 when the Oilers won it in OT.
Yeah.
I remember game 6. The first 4 games are a little blurry, but I do remember that game 7. I definitely watched it.
Right. Yeah. It was a little crazy.
I'm just going to read you guys a list of names from that Stanley Cup Final. And you're going. It's unbelievable how many players in the Stanley Cup Final on both teams end up playing very bit part roles for the Islanders later. Ready?
Right.
Ryan Smith, Raffi Torres, Marc-Andre Bergeron, Steve Stais, Marty Riesener, Michael Pekka. God, we're not Dick Tarnstrom, Dwayne Rolison. And that's it for the Oilers. Just the
that's
whatever
just
10, just the 10. Keith O'Coin, Joseph Vasicek, Andrew Ladd, Doug Waite. It is unbelievable how many players on both of these teams end up just coming either before or after play for the Islanders.
That's amazing.
It blows every time I watch. I watched that Oilers. They had a documentary. They were the first. This Oilers team is actually close to my heart. It's one of my favorite non-Islander teams ever, probably because Marty Riesener was on it. But they had a documentary. I can't remember what it was called, Oil Drop or something.
I think it was Oil Change, wasn't it?
Oil Change, yes, Oil Change, where they followed this team around. And that documentary was something I watched a lot during the pandemic, where there's no hockey. And when I was watching it, I was like, "That's an Islander. Oh, that's an Islander. That's another Islander. Oh, there's another Islander. He's passing it to an Islander." Like it's just crazy how many players on this Oilers team and then the Hurricanes team ended up playing for the Islanders either before or after, including Bergeron, who was unbelievably good that year.
Yes.
Like really unbelievably good. Breakout year. And this is what I was alluding to at the top of the show, is when he was on it was getting highlights of other hockey games during this era was next to impossible. Like you had no idea what was going on in the greater hockey world. And that's why that's why the NHL insiders are so popular now. It's because when the advent of Twitter and stuff came, like it was a big deal if, Gord Miller or Elliot Friedman, James Duthie, whoever was talking about the Islanders, however you did, whether it was on the TSN website or Sportsnet, whatever it was back then, it was so hard to find any news about other teams. It was like the Wild West. The Oilers are stopping by Nassau Coliseum tonight. You didn't play every team back then either. So like it was like a once in a while thing where you'd like check in. Okay, let's see how the Canucks are doing. I got no idea. I see their name in the newspaper, but I'm not totally sure. But Marc-Andre Bergeron was a player that he was having such a good season that when you watched all like NHL on OLN on Monday night, they'd show a highlight of an Oilers game that looked like it was filmed from 1986. Like you're like, oh man, like that Bergeron guy scored again. He seems awesome. He's small. He wears number 47. He's got the visor. He had a yellow stick, I remember. And like you're like this. I want this guy. I want a guy like Marc-Andre Bergeron on my team. He seems like so much fun. And watching that Stanley Cup final, which was really fun. There, like you said, there was all sorts of shenanigans with the goalies. This was the one where Ty Conklin went behind the net and like basically passed it to I can't remember who. Maybe it was Justin Williams. I feel like he scored every goal for the Hurricanes. In that
it was it might have been Doug Wade.
It might have been Doug Wade. Yeah, exactly. Right.
It might have been.
Yeah. So like that goal happens. The Oilers were an 8 seed. The Hurricanes had Cam Ward, who was rookie in goal. And their team was littered with veterans like Doug Wade chasing a ring, like Mark Recchi. I know I think he had rings at that point, but it was like guys of that ilk on the Hurricanes, Rod Brendamore, etc. And there was Bergeron. Like he was a kind of a breakout star. And what was unfortunate about it was like, I want this guy, but why on earth would the Oilers ever trade this guy? He's the best player ever. Like this, how could you ever trade this guy? But he had a great season that year, knocked Rolison out, which too bad, but lo and behold, the next year, the Oilers, they had a weird one that next year. So he ends up on the block.
Yeah. It's a little crazy. The Oilers did have a weird year that year, and they made 2 consequential trades with the Islanders, one of which we've already talked about, the Ryan Smith deal, which you can listen to our episode from a couple of seasons ago if you want to hear more about that. But before that trade went down, the Oilers traded Bergeron to the Islanders for a 3rd-round pick and a young defenseman named Denis Grabeshkov.
Yes.
So, Isles Den, I will ask you, what exactly do you remember about Denis Grabeshkov? I am significantly older than you, and I can tell you I don't remember a goddamn thing about this guy. I remember his name, and that was it. Do you have any connection to this person whatsoever? Because if the answer is no, I
just remember that 2006 squad. There was John Erskine, Denis Grabeshkov, even this guy Tommy Petnin.
Of course,
Tommy Petnin. Absolutely. I actually remember. Yeah,
he was a huge prospect that definitely panned out.
Yeah, and these guys, I mean, they were just in the lineup to fill the spots. Basically, it felt like till the end of the season. That's all I remember about Denis Grabeshkov, and I cannot imagine caring that he was traded from the Islanders or being excited to get him. I mean,
you'd be surprised. You'd be very surprised because on MikeMustGo.com back then, when they traded, it was a big deal because that Sopel Parrish trade to the Kings went down pretty late at night, and back then there was one place to go to find out anything or find out instant reaction from trades, and it was MikeMustGo.com. I have a MikeMustGo.com sweatshirt behind me that Usher Maddie gifted me, and it's now a huge piece of my wardrobe. But the place was just littered with people being like, "This Grabeshkov kid is he's the shit. Like he's legit. Like this is a blue chip defensive prospect. He's going to be great for the team. This is exactly what we needed. We can build a blue line around this guy." And nobody in the forum is like, how do you know this? Because like I just said, there was no way to even watch other NHL games back then. So how on earth were you watching Denis Grabeshkov play for I don't think it was the Ontario Reign back then, but whoever the Kings AHL team was. But people were pumped. They were excited because they made the trade. It was the first time I had gone through a trade deadline where the Islanders were sellers, and understood what that meant. I was 15 at the time, so the Islanders, the previous 3 seasons that were played before the lockout, they were in the playoff race, right? So they were buyers. They were getting guys like Jason Weimer, etc. Now this is a seller thing, and people were excited. Like this is the right way to do it. Mike did a good job, which you never heard back then. Getting Grabeshkov and Tambellini, like getting 2 good prospects, but people were excited about Grabashkov, and I think I was at his debut, right? He played right away for the Islanders.
Yeah. He ended up playing 21 games in 05-06, which shocked me because I don't remember any of them. And I remember at the time of the trade, people being like, "Oh, that was bad. They shouldn't have done that." And I'm like, really? Why? Like, I don't understand. Like, I didn't see anything. I'm not trying to like make myself sound smart. Like, I literally didn't see anything in this guy over the apparently course of 21 games he played for the Islanders, racking up 3 whole assists. That I was like, no, I don't know. I kind of like Bergeron. I've seen him play a little bit. And I'm excited to. So yeah, Dennis Grabashkov, no offense, but I don't think too many people were upset to see you go. He did have a good season a couple of years later for the Oilers. He had 7 goals, 32 assists, 39 points. And people were excited at the time. Oilers GM Kevin Lowe said, "We see the upside in the player we're acquiring. We see this as a long-term upgrade," meaning he's just younger than the guy we traded, which he was, obviously. But he was all 23, and Bergeron was 26. So there you go. And now a word from our sponsors. First is always VintageIceHockey.com, where you can get t-shirts, hoodies, jerseys, and more featuring over 100 classic hockey logos. Vintage Ice Hockey now carries a full line of Islanders Anxiety merch featuring our blue and orange brain logo, as well as our Al Arbor and the Island shirts. And as always, our portion of the sales go directly to the Center for Dementia Research. That is VintageIceHockey.com. Try wines from the Pinot Project. They offer a Rosé, a Pinot Grigio, and a Pinot Noir that was named a Top 100 Best Buy by Wine Enthusiast magazine. All are delicious, priced at less than $15 a bottle, and available at local wine shops and at UBS Arena. Learn more at thepinotproject.com. Please drink responsibly. Getting Bergeron was kind of a huge deal because he was ready to goose the power play. His offense was great. Like, they didn't really have anybody that was kind of like that. I think by that point, Adrian Aucoin had already been, gone from the team for a number of years, and they really needed somebody to kind of break the puck out and move the puck. And that was what Bergeron was great at. But the thing was, the big knock on him was that he was 5'9", listed as 5'9", which in hockey terms means he was probably more like 5'7.5". Like, they say he's 5'9", but he's probably really not. But whenever anybody that's small, let me back up. That 3rd round pick ended up getting back to the Islanders, and they ended up taking Kirill Petrov with that pick. How about that? Anyway, so it was Bergeron and Petrov for Dennis Grabashkov. Wow, that is a pretty good deal. But anyway, I liked Bergeron right away, and I thought this guy was great. I love these little guys when they come in and play. Reminds me a lot. He's going to remind me a lot, I should say, of Mark Streit, another one of the favorites that I'm always talking about on the show, who was not much taller than 5'9" and had a lot of the same skills. But so Isles then talk about where Bergeron fit for you. Like you talked so far already about how he was this sort of transformative player for you. And like, he drew your eyes and really sounds like one of the first real Islanders you kind of grabbed onto. Like, at what point was there a turning point in this season where you were like, that's my guy. I really like this guy and I really like what he's bringing to this team.
Yeah, so right away, with the Oilers making the Cup in 2006, I knew his name. I didn't know much about him. As Mike said, right, it was tough to really gauge any information on these guys. But the second he joined the team, I mean, this guy was he was electric. Yeah. He was setting guys up left and right, and he would also, that clapper is just unbelievable. Yes. The first things I think of, I have a list of Islanders right here benefiting from him setting them up for goals. These guys include Andy Hilbert, Aaron Asham. Wow. Asham was a good player.
He had a good slap shot himself, yeah.
Yes, a beautiful pass from Bergeron right by Dublowitz in a really important game at the end of the season against Toronto. I think that was the second out of the 4 games they needed to win. They're up 3-2 late in the third. Bergeron from right in front of DiPietro just makes this beautiful home run pass to Asham. He slaps it right by Raycroft, and the Islanders go up 4-2, eventually close out the game. He also, in a really important game against Philadelphia, every point mattered, and it was 3-3. The Flyers were really bad this year. Looks like we might lay an egg, and with 5 minutes left, he makes a ridiculous play cutting to the net, gives Andy Hilbert the wide open net that even he couldn't miss, and the Islanders win the game.
And Modi looks to clear. He got a weak attempt, but it came out of the zone anyway.
Well, it's good play by Yashin to
swatted out of there after that pass by Pody wasn't great.
Now Bergeron dances to the net center, score! Andy Hilbert puts the Islanders in front 4-3 with 4:40 to go in the third period.
What a play. What great effort by Bergeron, and then the backhand pass over to Andy Hilbert, who beats his man Gauthier to the far post. That is a great play. Acceleration, turn the corner, use the backhand, and make something happen. The Islanders, not known for being a transition rush team, get just that from Hilbert and Bergeron. Hilbert's second goal in just 12 games, a thing of beauty, and you don't see enough players utilize the backhand like Bergeron did there. He made a gorgeous pass right there.
And Andy Hilbert getting one of those dirty goals. He just did beat Gauthier to the net and flip it upstairs past Biron. Bergeron assists at 15-20 on Hilbert's 8th of the year, and he has not scored a bigger one than that.
He was just magical, honestly. I think he led the team in points from his arrival. And the second he got there, the Islanders went on like a little bit of a run.
Yeah.
And he was one of the reasons we didn't trade one of my favorite players at the time, Jason Blake, because his name was on the block. I remember there just being a lot of buzz. I don't know where that buzz was coming from. maybe my dad at the time, but
no, there was.
Jason Blake was. Yeah, there was legit buzz because he didn't have a contract.
Yeah, and he was on his way to scoring 40 goals.
Yes,
and the Islanders were so shoestring back then that everyone kind of saw the writing on the wall. Plus, Blake had a kind of like a reputation of being a guy who was more out for himself, I guess, than the team. We'll put it at that. But when they traded for Bergeron and kind of signaled they were buyers, everyone's like, okay, that means we're going to hold on to Blake. That's great. But then. And they go on a little bit of a run, and then they start to sputter a little bit, like right before the deadline, and then they get Smith. And I remember the night that they got Smith, they were like, "This trade is this day is amazing for Islander fans for a number of reasons. One, they got Ryan Smith, which is awesome, and two, it means Jason Blake is staying, and he stayed, and he had a really good close to the season. And he said a lot of that was due to the fact that he was thinking he was going to get traded that season because he had that breakout year. And another great thing about the Smith Bergeron thing and those trades coming like a month apart, when you watch there's a great CBC or Sportsnet, whoever Elliot Friedman was working for back then, kind of like the mini documentary where he comes to Nassau Coliseum and does like a little 8-minute thing for Hockey Night on Smith. And in that video, they show Smith get introduced to like his teammates for the first time in the locker room, and in the hallway it's like Mike Sillinger, Trent Hunter, who was from Red Deer, so he might know Smith just having local ties, and then Bergeron. And the look on Smith's face when he sees Marc-Andre Bergeron is so great, because it almost gives away that I don't think Ryan Smith knew that Marc-Andre Bergeron was on the Islanders, even though he was on, like, he's like, I remember getting traded, but he's like, oh, Bergie, what's up?
There it is, boys. Looks good. Hurry! Oh, you're crazy, eh? Yeah, really big. Wow. It's good, though. Yes. Good chance. Love it. All right, Smitty. See you, boys. See you out there. Call me after. We'll get it, buddy.
Like, oh God, this is so great. The Islanders are so far removed from the NHL universe at the time that he probably had no. Yeah, I heard he got traded, but I can't remember who.
Right,
he probably the Rangers, right? He got traded
to Siberia, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
And this is the same video where, like, the one guy, they show Ryan Smith coming in LaGuardia, and it's like one guy in a Jets jacket.
Yeah, there's one
like,
guy.
Hey, what's going on, man? Like, that's it. Like,
I'll show you. Make sure to check out the schools, and I'll tell you. Like,
right. This guy just left a press conference in Edmonton where he's freaking crying in front of the entire nation. He gets LaGuardia, and nobody knows who he is. Right? He's just another guy with luggage walking around LaGuardia. It's too funny, but yeah, no, you're 100% right. He showed up. So Bergeron shows up again. This is prior to the Smith trade, and immediately catches fire. 23 games he played as an Islander that season. He had 21 points. He had 6 goals and 15 assists. Like, that was
incredible.
That's incredible. He was magic. And listen to this. Here's 3 other members of that defensive core: Bruno Gervais, Freddie Meyer, Chris Campoli. Like, think about that. for a second. Like, this is the blue
Pronger,
line.
Niedermeyer.
Yeah, this is the blue line that this man is joining. So no wonder he showed up and was like magic out there. But yeah, no, they had a great run. I guess DiPietro might have gotten hurt. They kind of stumbled, and then obviously Wade Dublowitz takes over. They get the poke check of the ages in that game against the Devils. At this point, they've gotten Ryan Smith, who's also had a pretty productive, first few games as an Islander. And sure enough, they make the playoffs on the last game of the season. And that was about it. There was an unfortunate end to that season. But, boy, what a run that was. I mean,
Bergeron was good in that series.
Sure, yeah.
There was one thing in that series that I remember forever, and it was Marc-Andre Bergeron scoring the game winner on a slap shot on the power play. And, man, he had me thinking some crazy things when that puck went in.
Negotiates by Zubris. Throws it across for Bergeron. Marc-Andre Bergeron. Tom Cody, the one-timer. Bergeron scores! Marc-Andre Bergeron with a power play goal. 11:23 left to go in regulation time, and the Islanders have a 3-2 lead.
The OLN feed, I can't remember if it was game 2 or 3 or when. I was at game 3, but so game 2 or 1, they're like, to stop the Islanders, you think it's about Smith, you think it's about Yashin or Shatan, but the key to stopping the Islanders is slowing down Marc-Andre Bergeron. And I believe at the time they called him perhaps the best pound-for-pound trade deadline acquisition. And so rarely in the NHL does a player just fit perfectly. And that's all. It just, you felt it. You felt that this guy was the perfect linchpin for this team. The Islanders, like you said, O'Coin was gone. The season before that, they were trotting out a blue line where it's like Sopel, Lukowicz, Zhitnik was there. So he was kind of running the power play, but he was past it a bit. And they just didn't have that guy. And you also forgot one guy on that blue line who I think is actually pivotal to the story, which is Tom Poti.
Oh, right.
And Poti and Bergeron ended up having like a really good give and take with one another because they both were offensively talented, but went about it very differently. Like Poti was always looking to, he was much softer with like how he wanted to get the puck to the net. And Bergeron was just, he was, as Patrick Waugh called Sorokin and Varlamov, like the Ferrari and the Cadillac. I'm not going to call either one of them, one of those cars, but like Tom Poti maybe was the Ford and Marc-Andre Bergeron was a Nissan or something. Like there was something special about the dynamic that those two had. And those guys were, I don't know if they ever crossed paths with the Oilers, but another Oiler-Islander connection there with Poti as well. And one other thing I have to mention, because we talk about this all the time with guys when they come to the island, it's an age-old question that we ask on Islanders Anxiety and this show. And Marc-Andre I would love to know how many players on the Islanders Marc-Andre Bergeron knew when he came to the Islanders. Because like I said, you didn't play every team twice back then.
Right.
I think you maybe hosted them and you would alternate whether like the Islanders would go to Edmonton or Edmonton would go to the Islanders. But that was a big thing about the second lockout. Was like, we got to make sure that every team gets a chance to see every player, every fan base. So I don't think he got to play every team every season that year. So he might not have played against the Islanders very much. He might not. There wasn't much of a French Canadian contingent really. Was it Gervais? That's really it I can think of off the top of my head on that team. So like, he shows up. What does he know about Long Island? What does he know about the Islanders? We always talk about this era being like the mercenary Islanders too. Like, he's like, what is an Andy Hilbert? Like, what the hell am I doing here? Like, all right, I'll just bomb pucks from the point. Like, he probably let him play with a little bit of freedom because he's like, I got no idea who any of these guys are. Apparently, that little guy with blonde hair and the huge visors has scored 40 goals this season. I've never heard of Jason Blake before. How's that happen? Like, it's incredible that it just worked out so seamlessly. It reminds me of like when Kyle Palmieri came to the Islanders. Like, it just felt like a glove in a hand situation. This felt like that too. Like this guy did no wrong somehow in the year that they traded for him.
When he scored that game-winning goal in Game 2, he was on the ice with Mike Sillinger, Victor Kozlov, Ryan Smith, and Tom Poti. None of those guys were on the team the year before. Not one.
That's amazing. That is amazing.
Kozlov was the best, man.
Yeah.
Oh,
I was going to
another
say
guy.
that like Bergeron might be, I mean, obviously a lot of guys fit this sort of criteria, but he might be one of the perfect, we might as well call them like the Marriott Islanders. Like they only know about the Marriott, right? They come here, they're with Edmonton. They're playing the Rangers the night before or the night after, or the Devils the night before, the night after, maybe the Bruins or Flyers, whatever. They come in, they roll in at 2:00 in the morning from LaGuardia. They sleep in the Marriott. They walk out, maybe sign an autograph or two, play the game, walk onto a bus, get back to LaGuardia, and then fly away, right? Like that's the only thing this guy definitely knew about the Islanders. But somehow he showed up, and like you said, he just fit this team like a glove. And and this is kind of like one of those things where like you hope for this, like, right? Your team makes a trade deadline. Actually, it was prior to the trade deadline.
He came early, and it was like that's what I was saying. Like it was like a sign to everybody. Like we're not giving up on the season. We're not giving up on. We're going to be buyers.
He was having so much fun.
Oh my
That's
God,
what I love about That's what I love about this team. He goes into free agency. I know Neil Smith signed a bunch of those guys, but Garth Snow got Victor Kozlov. That was actually like the last signing before the season started. He got Bergeron. He got Ryan Smith. He even got Richard Zednik.
Yeah.
I think there might be one more.
I'll tell you what he got. He got the Hockey News General Manager of the Year award at the end of the year. That's what Garth Snow got. That's all that matters. He bring home the big hardware. But
well, and that was the season he traded Zhitnik and Mike York in separate trades with the Flyers. So like in the middle of December, he traded Zhitnik for Freddie Meyer. And then he was like, by the way, I'm also going to trade Mike York. And that was how he got Randy Robitaille. And in that Robitaille trade was the pick that the Islanders used to select Matt Martin. So he was really having a good time.
Yeah.
Because I mean, he was having it was like a video game to him. He's like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know the GM code. Like this is so much fun. I'm just trading guys around, and he had a good season. So good on him. Yeah, February 18th was the Bergeron trade. So a little
especially
bit
those circumstances too.
Sure,
like
absolutely.
he just walked in there and he just had a really good start. Like you could say what you want about him, anyone could, but that one season you got to give him credit.
Yeah, and I was going to say like I think there might not have been so many financial constraints at this point. I mean we'll talk about the next season in a minute, but like after the next couple of seasons, they started to bottom out, started to kind of like, worry more about what's going to happen with the Coliseum. There wasn't money coming in. What are we going to do? And that's when the purse string started getting a little bit tighter. But yeah, first year Garth Snow, man, he took a lot of people and made them believers, for a brief period before everybody wanted his head, of course, and, put up billboards and such to get him fired. But that's many years into the future.
Want to shop Walmart Black Friday deals first? Walmart Plus members get early access to our hottest deals. Join now and get 50% off a 1-year annual membership. Shop Black Friday deals first with Walmart Plus. See terms at walmartplus.com.
Hey, it's Kaylee Cuoco for Priceline. Ready to go to your happy place for a happy price? Well, why didn't you say so? Just download the Priceline app right now and save up to 60% on hotels. So whether it's Cousin Kevin's Kazoo Concert in Kansas City, go Kevin, or Becky's Bachelorette Bash in Bermuda, you never have to miss a trip ever again. So download the Priceline app today. Your savings are waiting. Go to your happy place for a happy price with Priceline's Black Friday sale. Save now and travel later with our best deals of the year.
Go to your happy price, Priceline.
This run, it ended in a brief and unfortunate, 5-game loss to the Lightning. Although, as Isles Den said before, that one win, courtesy of Marc-Andre Bergeron. So there you go. And then
Sabres.
Oh, excuse me. Did I say Lightning? Sorry, I meant Sabres. Yeah. Sorry.
Well, I mean, the Lightning just did it the season before that, so it's not. And it was not a very different series either.
Right.
The Islanders got boned by the officiating, and
you're right.
DiPietro came back. Right, Dublowitz played the first 2 games, I think, of this series, and the first game, and then DiPietro came in, and there was the Brendan Witt goal that got called back, and then that was what started the tried and true tradition of Islander fans hurling debris on the ice. Because I was at that game, and there was just shit raining all over the place, because that was a maybe the worst call that I've ever seen go against the Islanders. Like Worse than
Which
the
one?
Vanek.
Yeah, I
The
was gonna
Brendan
say,
Witt.
so many.
Brendan Witt scored a goal, a game tying goal. Why was Brendan Witt on the ice in that situation? I got no idea. Islanders are desperate for a goal to basically keep the series alive at that point, and he scores. Like the puck goes in, and then they ruled that he had it went in after the whistle, or he had pushed Miller or whatever. But it was terrible call, and it was because Lindy Ruff had spent the first 2 days of that series complaining that the Islanders were headhunting Ryan Miller. Like they were shooting the puck at his head on purpose, which was, no, that's not true, Lindy. These guys just aren't very good. Like that they don't know where do you think Andy Hilbert knows where he's trying to shoot the puck?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Bruno Gervais is definitely aiming for Ryan Miller's head, and he's gonna hit it. But I remember being just so angry leaving that night. But yeah, like you said, it as we like to refer to that series, the closest 5-game series in the history of the NHL until the Islanders played Carolina this year.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. But yeah, so again, didn't last very long, but enthusiasm was high, energy was high. Looked like this team was going to be pretty good. Unfortunately, things did not work out. They didn't come back with the same team because Jason Blake left, Ryan Smith left, and there wasn't a whole lot. I think that was Alexa Yashin, right? Didn't they buy him out that year?
They bought him. Yeah, they bought him out.
So, it took a lot of goals away from them, and the team was not very good. And Bergeron, unfortunately, could not recapture the magic. I mentioned before he had 21 points in 23 games the first time he came to the Islanders, right immediately after the trade. Well, in 46 games with the Islanders the next season, he had 18 points. He didn't even reach that 21-point mark. It was not good. 9 goals, 9 assists. And later on that season at that deadline, and again, February 26th. So about a year and a week or so later, his Islanders tenure ended with a trade to Anaheim. That actually, this was where they got the pick back that they had traded to the Oilers in the first place, that 3rd-round pick, and that pick ended up being Kirill Petrov. So again, it all kind of came back around for the Islanders to kind of get their own pick back. Yeah, so in a little over a year, Marc-Andre Bergeron came, he conquered for, 3 months in 2007. And then by February 2008, he was gone. He was an Anaheim Duck. He wouldn't be there for very long. We'll get to his tour around the league in a minute. But so Islesden, what do you remember about this sad chapter? I mean, this guy comes in, you're a young fan, he captures your imagination, he makes you a huge fan. And then literally a year later, almost to the day, he is gone. And he is traded not anywhere, across the country, back again during this era when you're not going to see him again. He's gone. He's an Anaheim Duck now. Do you remember experiencing that trade and processing that?
Yeah, so I remember that season with the team. So they come off of 2007, and obviously there's a lot of change with Blake, Yashin, all the guys you mentioned.
Right.
And what I remember about that team is they couldn't score.
No.
And they weren't very good, but Garth Snow tried his best to kind of do what he did the year before and just have some fun. He got Brian Berard, who returned.
Yes.
I think he had an earlier tenure.
Yes.
He got Ruslan Fedotenko, Mike Comrie, who we talked about before. There was some more Joseph Vazicek, Bill Guerin. So he kind of tried to put all the pieces back together and have some fun.
I think is the way to put it. Yeah.
I think he really,
Andy Sutton.
realized
this is the Andy Sutton,
all right.
Sutton experience.
I think he realized that it was not going to be this easy. So this team failed, and I think it took them a little bit to fail, which is why I think it was all the way up until the deadline. So this team wasn't very good. DiPietro was having an unbelievable season. He went to the All-Star game, so he was kind of covering for the team's holes at the time. And Bergeron, I remember this season, I remember him not playing a game. And I remember asking my dad, why isn't Bergeron playing? And my dad's like, plays no defense. And I was like, I didn't care about defense at the time. I mean, I'm 8 years old. I want to see that clapper. So that's what I remember really about Bergeron that season. So obviously it didn't go very well. And then, I got to see him reemerge a few years later in a brighter spot.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we'll get to that in a minute. But yeah, so you shared this article here about the day the trade went down. And again, it was February 26, 2008. And the same day, the Islanders traded Chris Simon. So they sent Simon to the Minnesota Wild for a 6th-round pick. Again, we talked about Chris Simon on another first season episode of Weird Islanders podcast. And then they also traded Bergeron to the Anaheim Ducks. These trades allowed for younger players to come up, like a certain man named Jeff Tambellini, who, as we've talked about before, cannot be discussed on the show because he played too many damn games. But if there's a weirder Islander out there than Jeff Tambellini, I would like to see him. He's one of the weirder Islanders. He just played too many games. But yeah, so he was going to get an opportunity. But the Islanders also acquired a guy on that same day who will definitely get an episode on this show. We just got to find the right guest. Rob Davison, who of course would go on to score one of the greatest goals in the history of the Islanders from 190 odd feet away on Vesitauskala. So we'll get to that at some point. But
I was at that game and Davison's debut, and Davison showed up in the middle of his debut. He was late, and I can't remember if it was Snow himself, but somebody had to go pick him up in the middle of the game because he was delayed or whatever. And the Islanders opted at the time, we don't need to call anyone up. We'll just play the first period with 5 defensemen or whatever. And then Davison will come join a team that was just, you look at the list of players that ended up getting not just a couple games, but like a more than a handful of games on this team that season. It's scary stuff. Like people forget the context of so much what of the Islanders like dark years. This is like the very beginning of a pretty dark period for the Islanders, where they were really struggling to get anybody to commit to playing here. So they would get the 1-year deals. Like you said, Garth would do his best to kind of patch holes and put fires out as best he could. Like Andy Sutton was a multi-year deal, but besides that, you're talking about guys like Fedotenko and Wasicek and such to like fill holes. And Bergeron was at that point like a guy that the Islanders it felt like they were ready to commit to be a part of whatever the hell this thing was going to turn into, if it turned into something good.
Right.
And then they get Berard. So all of a sudden you're like, okay, like this is starting to look like an okay blue line with Witt, Sutton, Bergeron, Berard, Campoli's like up and coming. They still got Gervais kicking around, and they have Aaron Johnson, played 30 games for them that season. Matt Spiller got some
I remember
time.
Matt Spiller, yeah.
Oh man,
He's on
Matt
our list.
Spiller.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it just was a very strange, forgettable. It was what should have been a forgettable year, but of course every season is unforgettable with this team. The leading scorer for the Islanders that year was Mike Comrie, who was like out of the blocks on fire with 49 points. So like it just tells you that they had nothing. They couldn't score. And Rick,
do you remember that opening night season when Mike Comrie has like his 4th goal?
Oh yeah,
in the first
we
2
talked
games?
about that. Yeah.
It was incredible stuff, man. He was on fire.
People were chanting MVP. It was game 2.
Yes.
Oh God. When people like make fun of the Horvat trade for whatever reason off Long Island, who don't understand, like, you want to know why the Islanders had to like go out and be aggressive to trade for guys like him or Kyle Palmieri or JG Pajot or Alex Romanov when they become available via trade? It's because this team has gotten free agents like Andy Sutton. Like that was the big ticket guy, or Andrew Ladd or Joseph Wasicek. Like that's the type of player, the level of player that would come here on free agent deals for most of their history. They even had, when they had Tavares, like that was supposed to be a big thing. Like, oh, they can go get free agents because they'll want to play with Tavares to like boost their career.
Nope.
And they did. They got Brad Boyce. Like that. Like this is how it works here.
Yeah, right.
And that's something that people like. You want to know why they were aggressive and made these trades, or Lou trades 1st round picks. Show them this team. Be like, well, because otherwise he'd be trying to get guys like Nick Aube-Kubel to come to the Islanders, which was going to make anything better here. So it's just my aside.
No, this might be a bit of a hot take, but I think the reason the 3 of us are sitting around talking about this team so fondly, and people are going to be listening to this and smiling, thinking about this team as well, is because it was pre-Twitter. Like it was everybody's got to have an opinion. Everybody's got to get on their case. We got to have chiming in on whether or not this guy's win shares, or,
they gave up that for Rob
exactly.
Davison?
Whether his year 7 of that contract is really going to suck. Okay, well, who cares? Like the Islanders got Marc-Andre Bergeron, right? The Islanders got this guy. Like it's fine, great, let's go, let's roll. I think we've lost a lot of that sort of fun in this era. But yeah, we definitely lost a lot of fun when they traded Marc-Andre Bergeron, but we did get Rob Davison, so there you go. And yeah, this kind of started, unfortunately for Bergeron, the tour that he would take around the NHL, and he would play for a lot of teams. He didn't stay in Anaheim very long. He was traded there. He was traded there in February, and then by June of that year, he was traded to Minnesota for a third-round pick. Then he signed with Montreal a year later. He played a year in Minnesota, signed with Montreal, signed with Tampa Bay, spent 3 seasons there, was traded to Carolina for one of my all-time favorites, Joel Vermeen. Pick used for Joel Vermeen. That's the name you don't see too often anymore. Then he went to Switzerland, and he played 3 seasons with Zurich in the Swiss League, and then tried to make a comeback. Signed with the Blue Jackets in February of 2017, spent 22 games in Cleveland of the AHL. Had a contract, I guess a 2-way contract, but they never brought him up. And finally in October of 2017, which was not long ago, 7 years ago, he finally announced his retirement. So I always had a soft spot for Marc-Andre Bergeron. I do remember him playing for Tampa Bay for a little bit. The rest of these teams, not so much. I definitely don't remember Carolina Hurricane Marc-Andre Bergeron, although it's kind of funny that after all that we talked about before, the crashing into Andrew Ladd, into Rolison, he would end up playing in Carolina. So, I mean, Eilsden, when you saw Bergeron come around, as you're getting older, you're maybe finding out the Islanders don't always make the playoffs on the last day of the season with a poke check in the shootout. Exactly. All of a sudden, like, wait a minute, what's going on here? But sometimes these guys start to float back around playing against the Islanders. Did you keep up tabs with Bergeron? Did you kind of have a soft spot for him as well? Like whenever you saw him come in, maybe for these other teams?
Yeah, so it was a little bit harder to obviously follow these guys back then. Right. But in 2010, I was getting used to the Islanders not being in the playoffs at this point. And I'm watching the first round series with the Canadiens and the Capitals. The Canadiens are huge underdogs, and that's when I started to really like Yaroslav Halak, actually, who carried them that series. But there he was, Game 7. The Canadiens are in Washington. They're not even supposed to be in Game 7. And at the end of the first period, Marc-Andre Bergeron scores the first goal of the game on a 4-on-3 power play. And I was like, whoa, Bergeron's here? Wait.
That's amazing.
I was like, wow. Yeah, that was great.
That's awesome.
And Bergeron was on that blue line for the Canadiens, a 7 seed that went all the way to the conference final. Yeah. So that was my last memory of Marc-Andre Bergeron.
That's pretty funny.
And that was just when the NHL was starting to get more, I don't know.
This was like OLN period.
Yeah, it was right. It was right when they were transitioning to NBC Sports.
Right.
Like it was like they're getting a little bit more modern. It's basically 1992 in the NHL at this point, rather than it being like the early 80s, like it was for much of the few years after the lockout. And that team. And I remember having a similar experience, like being like, oh my God, I love this Canadiens team. And Bergeron was good for them that year. I have a friend who I worked with at Action Network for a while, who was a huge Canadiens fan. And within 3 days of him joining the company, this is probably back in 2018 or so, 2019, he came up to me. He's like, I heard you're an Islander fan. And I said, yep. And he goes, if I say the words Marc-Andre Bergeron, what do you think of? And I just had this gigantic smile on my face when he said that to me. And the two of us just talked about Marc-Andre Bergeron for like 45 minutes in the office that day, because he was like, I loved that guy. I don't understand how he's not like one of the best players ever. And I was like, I'm the same way. And I think there's a lot of Islander fans feel that way, because all he did, like when he was good, he was just unstoppable. It was how do you stop this guy on a power play when he's lining up a slap shot? Like how is this guy, how can you stop him? I don't know. He's small, he's quick, he moves the puck, he's great first pass. I guess the answer to that question is he just can't play defense. Like as Eilsden was saying earlier in the show, like we're not focused on that. Right. And as you said, he started doing the tour, and the tour was basically like the advent of, he was like the first guy I can think of who was just like a true power play specialist, like the John Cooper. I don't know if Cooper was coaching the Lightning when Bergeron ended up there. I can't remember. I don't know. He definitely wasn't, right?
No,
like that was a little bit before his time. But when he was with the Lightning, I just remember they would dress 7 defensemen, and it was because they only would play Bergeron on the power play. They're like, we got the secret weapon. We're gonna dress 7, and Bergeron will come out when when someone else was in the penalty box.
This was Guy Boucher, Tampa Bay Lightning, which
yes.
that totally tracks because he's a guy who overthinks everything. So that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I feel like amongst weird Islanders that we've talked about, if you talk to people about Marc-Andre Bergeron, I think you're going to get more smiles than anything else because I think this is a guy who endeared himself to a lot of teams. I don't even think Edmonton fans are probably still holding on to that crash in the crease. I bet they still appreciated him for what he did the year before and that season. Lightning fans, I'm sure, remember him fondly. I guess at least one Canadiens fan that we know of remembers him pretty fondly. And he was a really exciting player, although for a very short period of time. And that's what leads me to these. I have these fun facts. I love doing these notes for this show because I learned stuff that I didn't even realize and kind of putting it all in black and white here. And so I'll throw this out to you guys. To me, Bergeron played a lot. Like, I just felt like he was here even before. I remember him before he was an Islander. During the time he was an Islander, I remember him seeing him around, although it was mainly with Tampa Bay. This man only played 490 games in the NHL. Not even 500 games. Do you believe that? Is that insane?
That's shocking.
That is shocking.
Yeah.
I'm not kidding.
Yeah, because I feel like every time you looked up, it was like, oh, Marc-Andre Bergeron is on this team now. Oh,
Right.
he's getting graded for this team now.
Right.
That is shocking.
He played for 7 teams.
I would have guessed in the
490
700s.
Me too.
If you had asked me, I would have guessed
Easily.
Yeah.
Easily. I was shocked. I was like, wait, this dude didn't play 500 games? That's crazy.
Incredible.
He did, however, basically average a half a point a game, 82 goals, 153 assists, 235 points. So 235 points in 490 games. It's like just shy of a half a point a game. That's pretty damn good. That's fun fact number 1. Fun fact number 2 is he made the playoffs 5 times in his seasons. 57 games played in the playoffs, 7 goals, 8 assists, 15 points. Not too bad. He went to 1 cup final with the Oilers, 1 Eastern Conference final with the Canadiens, as Isles Dead mentioned, and then another Eastern Conference final with Tampa Bay, which that was the year with Dwayne Rollison, where they had they lost 1-0 to the Bruins, who went on to win.
And Bergenheim, right?
Yes,
Yep, Bergenheim.
Yeah,
that was a great Lightning team that we were rooting for back then.
So out of the 5 trips to the playoffs this man had, 3 of them he went to at least the conference final, if not to the Stanley Cup final. Like, that's crazy too.
I mean,
he was, like you said, he could be unstoppable. It was unbelievable how this guy was able to do this kind of stuff, to put this stuff together. Now, fun fact comes from his post playing career. He owns a NASCAR team that bears his number, 47. How about that?
Makes sense. That honestly makes sense too. Just like fast and lightning.
Yeah.
Power.
And until last season, he was the GM and president of Trois Rivières of the QMJHL, which is where he played his junior team. He got fired at the end of last year, and they had a bad season in 23-24, and so he got fired at the end of the year. But I wish I had known that he was the GM there, because I would have been rooting for them for sure. So yeah, his Islanders career was only 69 games. 69 games, 15 goals, 24 points, 24 assists, 39 points. This, again, just about half a point a game. 39 points in 69 games. That's really, really good. 15 goals and 24. That's great. And then the playoffs, 5 games played, 1 goal, 1 assist. So, I mean, these are all terrific numbers. And I feel like we got cheated out of more Marc-Andre Bergeron time. But maybe, you know what? Maybe that's just how the man rolled. I don't know. I
think that's a great way to put it. It's just how he rolls.
Yeah.
This is a totally unique player. This is a totally, especially at that time. If Marc-Andre Bergeron suited up today, he'd be like everybody's. He'd be the Mark Barberio, right? Like everyone analytic darling, guy who's like
they would go in on his defensive.
Oh,
metrics.
definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you trade it, you know what you're giving up. But this would be a guy who would you can just, if you close your eyes and you just picture him, you can see him, his name on Twitter being like debated ad nauseum, and us being like, I'm so sick of hearing about this guy. So I'm so happy he was around before it got to be, it's just exhausting to be a hockey fan.
Question for you guys.
Sure.
So my dad had to point out to me that he didn't play defense because I was just 8 years old. They trade for this guy. He's ripping clappers left and right. I'm loving it. Loving it. So did you guys notice that there were deficiencies in his game? I thought he was perfect.
I just remember him being small. That's any defensive issue he had was just because he was small. And he could just get pushed off the puck pretty easily. That was all I remember of him. And then I was like, Jason Blake is small too. And that dude scores 40 goals. So who cares?
And I don't remember it being like Howie Rose had his guys that he would pick on. And I don't remember them ever going really in on Bergeron for that reason. But I also think everyone just knew what they were, what the Marc-Andre Bergeron experience was supposed to be, which was, look, yeah, you're going to deal with this guy maybe being a little too aggressive or something, because he is what he is, and his toolkit is what it is, right? He's small, but he's got incredible offensive instincts. I don't remember that at all, because I remember his reputation and time on the Islanders so fondly.
Right.
He was just so good for them. He was just so good. 39 points in 69 games for a defenseman back then when the Islanders sucked. Like and it's not like he even had like a crazy shooting percentage, right? He just took a bunch of shots. I'm looking at it now. 151 shots, so he had a 9.9 shooting percentage, which is high for a defenseman, but like still, it's not off the charts crazy. He's just he was just a dynamo.
Right.
But
was he also like, have you seen a better slap shot from an Islander since then? Maybe Mark Streit was up there.
Yeah, I was just, you just took the words out right of my mouth.
Yeah.
The slapper or clapper or however you want to call it, it always reminds me of Streit, because he was a guy, also not a big guy, also not a big slap shot, but for whatever reason, his windup was short, but it was accurate. And he scored a ton of goals that way. And that's how I remember Bergeron. Also, one other thing about the defensive aspect of the game, of his game. Yeah, maybe his defense wasn't that good. Again, he was just kind of a small guy. But like that roster had Sean Hill, Brendan Witt, Radek Martinek. Like, let those guys pound people into the glass and let Bergeron do the power play stuff, you know? So I was fine with it.
He was a breath of fresh air. And I think the only player of his ilk at the time, like that Oilers team that he went to the Cup with, they had Sheldon Souray, but Sheldon Souray was like a better version of Marc-Andre Bergeron.
Yeah.
There were very little like of these diminutive defensemen that we see now. Like there's quite a bit of them. But back then he was a bit of a unicorn.
Yeah, for sure.
And we knew that before he came. He comes and you're just like, I don't think I ever took for granted having him on the Islanders.
Yeah.
And he's also a guy who there's some white whales you look for in terms of like old Islander jerseys. I would love a Marc-Andre Bergeron jersey of the RBK Edge, where they had like the 3 different color sleeves. They're pretty widely disdained jerseys because the Islanders weren't very good back then. But that jersey, like watching the orange sleeves when he would cock back for his slap shot, I was like, this guy is about to just rip this thing, and I just can picture him perfectly. That would be a jersey I would love, because, and also like the number 47 on him was pretty cool too. Right. Like there was just so much cool to him.
Small guy with a big number, always cool.
Yeah, exactly. A small guy he was like a training camp number on the small little guy. And you said like you called him like a Marriott Islander, like the Marriott Islanders. Like like the room service contingent, like these guys of them, he might be the most talented that I can think of.
Yeah,
like just so good.
It's terrific. Yeah. This has been an absolute, I mean, you could hear in our voices the excitement that this guy still brings up. And he's another perfect example. I try not to beat this into the ground, but like, I wonder if he remembers, if he realizes what his Islanders legacy is and how there's like dudes sitting around on a Tuesday night in August talking about how much he meant to them as a player in his 69 games. I mean, it wasn't even a full season. He was here for literally a year, and then he was gone. And it was like, it was the most fun year we had at the time. You know, if you're a little kid or you're an older person like me, like that year was fun. And so fun. We never take that stuff for granted.
And he was a big part of it.
Absolutely.
He might have ended up being like the most fun player on that team, and he was only there for 20 games. And as you say, like we always ask that question, right? Like it's not really what we think the legacy is. It's like, I want to think about what this person thinks their legacy is. That makes this show so interesting. And because he played in Montreal and he was from Quebec, I think that he would be like, get stopped and people would talk about him and probably wax about his slap shot and his offensive instincts and that playoff run that they went on with him in the fold. He then goes to stay in the queue to be a GM, so he probably hears that a lot. I think he would be floored, honestly.
Yeah.
Because I bet you if he shows up at Centre Bell for a game, like he would get like a nice pop and people would stop him.
Right.
And he'd be like, yeah, that's because this is Montreal. I'm in a hockey market. I'm French Canadian. We went on that run. But if he came to UBS Arena for alumni night,
oh yeah,
and he heard the crowd, he'd be like, oh, I guess I was wrong. Like I'm actually like I think on like if you were to put up a poll, how many people like didn't like the Marc-Andre Bergeron experience when he was on the Islanders. I don't think you'd get a single vote, honestly.
There's
like,
no way anyone would not be happy.
It's very hard to find these universally beloved players, especially one who I guess had a flaw. Besides Isles Den's dad, he might be the only one who would vote no because he didn't play defense. But like, I can't think of anybody back who was watching this team and was like a big fan back then. It was like I didn't enjoy that. It was so much fun to have him. So I think he'd be pretty shocked to hear how loud it would get at UBS Arena when they announced a 69 game player is back to watch them.
Let's make it happen. Alumni Night 2025. Let's make it happen. Isles Dad, I hope you've had a lot of fun. This has been great. So how would you sum up the Marc-Andre Bergeron experience? Again, you're Mike. Usually Mike is the younger half of one of these episodes, but in this case, you really took to this player as a young kid. And like that to me is, we were talking before we came on, like to me, the first guy I remember really attaching myself to was Pat LaFontaine. And it would have been 1985, like this is 100 years ago. It might as well be. But like for you, this is kind of recent. And this player really meant something to you as a younger kid. So I'm curious to hear how like you sum up what you think of when you think of this player.
Really, my first real good memories, like positive memories as an Islander fan, were being at that last game of the season in New Jersey, that first playoff when I ever saw, which he scored the game-winning goal.
That's crazy.
Honestly, when I look back at it now, I'm honestly very thankful that they traded for Marc-Andre Bergeron, because if they didn't, the Islanders wouldn't have made the playoffs for the first 8 years of me following the team.
Wow.
So thank God for Marc-Andre
That's
Bergeron.
amazing. Yeah, I didn't even think of it that way. Holy crap. You're totally right.
Without him, they would not. There's no way they make the playoffs without him that season.
And I mean, they had that
Absolutely
dark era for sure. I mean, they made the 3 straight times and then that was it. And that would have been, they would have been an even longer drought without him. How about that? Wow. That's good. That's the most fun fact of all. How about that? That was awesome.
And it's good that you put it that way, right? Like, because most people think of that trade deadline, they think of Smith, but Smith kind of just was he was almost like a vanity trade at that point, whereas Bergeron filled a need and completely changed the season. Yeah. Like I will absolutely subscribe to the theory that that trade for Marc-Andre Bergeron by Snow saved that year and made possible one of the great make the playoff dashes you've ever seen. Or if you're not an Islander fan, you've never heard of.
And also, they traded for a lot of guys through these years. I think of Thomas Vanek, I think of Ryan Smith, and I don't have a great taste in my mouth when I think of those guys. But Bergeron, he did his job, and we traded him. There was really nothing to be sour about with him.
Definitely. It's funny with Bergeron, the trade is like, we could use this dude. We need this guy and he's going to really help us. With Ryan Smith, it was like, fuck it, let's do it. We're going for it.
I love that we did that.
Yeah, let's just go for it. And again, they both worked, but arguably, one of them was Captain Canada and the other guy was like an undrafted Quebecois guy who, ran over the Oilers' own goalie in the Stanley Cup final. So I'm not surprised why one guy gets more pub than the other guy. But it's true. This is arguably a more important trade than the Ryan Smith trade. So there you go.
After this, I'm going to watch that Ryan Smith intro when he gets into LaGuardia.
Oh my God.
That sounds incredible.
It's the best thing ever. Oh my God. Well, I'll send it to you.
Yeah, they're so good. There's so many good videos that you can find of that day. And that little scene is just so good because they do a good job of juxtaposing him leaving the airport and then arriving and like the whoever it is narrating it back then make kind of like pokes fun, like why is the airport like not shut down for this guy? It's Captain Canada flying in and there's only one guy to greet him. Like, come on.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Kudos to CBC, whoever, for realizing that and being in on the joke, basically.
Yeah.
So I actually have it right here, so I'll send it to you. But I hope you've had fun. This has been great. And again, you made a great pick, and I hope you had a good time. And I can't wait to hear your podcast. So what's it called again? And when's it going to drop?
Isles House, September 18th. And thank you guys so much for having me on. I really enjoyed this too.
This has been a lot of fun, and we'll get you on again for sure. And this has been, like I said at the beginning, I just sit back and let you guys go. This was a lot of fun. Reminder that we are on Patreon at patreon.com/IslandersAnxiety. Sign up for ad-free episodes and bonus content, or join for free to get announcements and our weekly release calendar. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Audible.com, iHeartRadio, YouTube Music, wherever you get your podcasts. Please leave us a review where you can. Also, check out Isles House when it drops on September 18th. Our theme song is Knuckles by Bjorn Falk. So find out more of Bjorn's music on Bandcamp and Spotify. Read Lighthouse Hockey every single day for most up-to-date Islanders news and discussion. Of course, Islanders Anxiety Podcasts are part of the Fans First Sports Network. Shop VintageIceHockey.com. Try wines from the Pinot Project. Mike, where can everybody find you on Twitter?
The Big Lebowski with 2 E's.
Follow Mike at the Big Lebowski. You have had a lot of thoughts about Marc-Andre Bergeron in this episode. Do you have any final ones, or you think you've expunged your love for this man that has been building up for all these years?
No, I got one more. And what I'll say about Marc-Andre Bergeron is a lot of episodes, as we said, this is our 4th season of Weird Islanders. And a lot of players that we've talked about are complicated, right? There's layers to it. There's nothing complicated about this player. It was just so much fun to watch him and have him on the team. And all 3 of us, as you can tell from this episode, we are thankful to have enjoyed the Marc-Andre Bergeron experience. I'm happy that he had a fun career. Like his career, like you said, the playoff runs and all that. Like it's a fun career to look at. It's not one of those ones where he's just like on bad teams all the time. So this is a player who deserved the good things that he got. And hopefully one day one of those good things would be a real nice pop at an alumni night, and would love for them just to, maybe we can make it happen where Tom Poti just tees him up for a one-timer during like an intermission or something on an alumni night. So I would love to see that shot one more time, just one more time.
That would be phenomenal. Islanders, let's get it. Come on, Islanders alumni game with the 07.
Yeah. I'd pay great money to watch that quintet that Isles then said was on the ice for his game tying goal against the Sabres, or game winning goal against the Sabres, snap it around one last time.
What we got to do is 02 to 05 team, and then 06 to like 2013 team. Get those guys all kind of set up, or to throw them all into a big
at Northwell Ice. Oh god,
yeah, that would be phenomenal. But yeah, let's do it.
Just be rooting for everybody.
Let's make it happen. Marc-Andre Bergeron night, alumni night 2025. Thank you for listening. We'll be back in a couple weeks with another Weird Islanders podcast episode. Until then, keep the Islanders weird. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.